A mother feels something strange and removes her son from a place. Minutes later, she discovers she saved his life in a way she never could have imagined. There are instincts that go beyond rational explanation. In this dossier, I investigate stories of women who sensed invisible dangers and acted against all logic, saving lives in the process. Two true stories. One shared mystery. How does our body know things our mind hasn't yet processed? Have you ever felt your instincts warn you about something you couldn't explain? Share in the comments. There's something that connects all mothers in the world, something that goes beyond biology, beyond science. It's an invisible force, an internal radar that pulses at frequencies reason cannot decipher. Experts call it maternal instinct. I prefer to call it a gift that some women carry like an invisible mark on their souls. For years, I've collected stories from women who felt this force in a different way. Not just the protective love common to all mothers, but something deeper, more unsettling. A kind of primal alarm that goes off without warning, forcing them to act against all logic, against all rational explanation. Today, I want to share two cases that reached me through very different channels. The first came from a handwritten letter sent by a mother from Chicago who still trembles when recounting her story. The second came through an anonymous phone call made by a teacher who prefers to keep her identity a secret. Both stories have something in common. Women who felt an inexplicable call to protect children. And by following that call, they discovered that sometimes our intuition knows things our mind hasn't yet processed. In their own words, these are their stories. Story 1. Emily, the mother who sensed danger. My name is Emily, I'm 40 years old, a marketing consultant, and mother to Noah, who is now 9 years old. What happened 2 years ago completely changed the way I see the world and, above all, how I trust my instincts. It was a Saturday in September, one of those crisp, sunny fall days in Chicago. Noah had been invited to the birthday party of Liam, a schoolmate. The party was at the family's house, a beautiful suburban home in Evanston, with a large garage they had turned into a play area for the kids. I knew Liam's mother, Sarah, from school meetings. She was a meticulous, caring woman, the kind you trust implicitly. When she showed me the garage, I was impressed. They had done an incredible job. Soft foam flooring, educational toys, a table decorated with a space-themed setup. The garage door was always open during parties, creating a spacious and airy area. Noah was thrilled. He ran straight to the toys and started playing with the other kids. I joined the other mothers in the kitchen, sipping coffee and chatting about everyday things, school, work, kids. Everything was perfectly normal, perfectly pleasant. But then, out of nowhere, it started. First, it was a strange feeling in my chest, like something was squeezing me from the inside, you know. I tried to ignore it, thinking it might be social anxiety since I've always been a bit reserved in large groups. But the feeling got worse. My heart started racing for no apparent reason. I looked out the kitchen window, which faced the garage. Noah was there, happily playing with his friends. Everything seemed normal, but my body was reacting as if there was an imminent danger, as if something terrible was about to happen. The sensation was physical, visceral. My stomach started churning, my hands got sweaty. It was as if every cell in my body was screaming, "Get out of here! Get your son out of here! Now!" I tried to calm myself. I took deep breaths, drank water, tried to focus on the other mother's conversation. But it was impossible. The anxiety was growing like a wave, completely taking over me. My chest hurt. I was starting to break out in a cold sweat. Sarah noticed something was wrong. "Emily, are you okay? You look pale." I think I'm having an anxiety attack," I replied, trying not to sound completely crazy. "I'm sorry. I think I need to leave." She was very understanding, offered me water, asked if I wanted to lie down for a bit. But I could only think of one thing: getting Noah out of there, immediately. I went to the garage where the kids were in the height of their fun. Noah was building a spaceship with blocks alongside two friends, completely engrossed in the game. "Noah, buddy, we're leaving." "Mom, why? The party's just getting started." He was clearly upset. "Mommy's not feeling well. I need to go home and rest." He pouted, as any kid would, but came with me. As I helped him put on his sneakers, I had to hold myself back from running out of there. My entire body was on high alert. We left at 2:30 p.m. I remember the exact time because I looked at the car's clock. wondering if I was losing my mind. How could I have a panic attack like that, out of nowhere, in a completely safe environment? Noah was sulky the whole way home. I felt like a terrible mother, pulling my son out of a party because of an inexplicable anxiety attack. When we got home, I made chamomile tea, lay down for a bit. Slowly, the feeling started to fade. At 3:45 p.m., my phone rang. It was Sarah, and she was in complete panic. "Emily, thank God you'd already left. The garage door collapsed." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean, collapsed?" "It crashed right onto the area where the kids were playing, right where Noah was building that spaceship. A girl broke her arm, a boy hit his head and needed stitches. It was so close to being much worse." She told me that apparently the garage door's support system had a defect. It was a heavy metal door, held up by an automatic mechanism. The technician who came later said the issue had been there for months, but was imperceptible. Until that afternoon, when it just gave way. When I hung up the phone, my legs were shaking. How was it possible? How did my body know, an hour and 15 minutes earlier, that something was going to happen in that place? There were no visible signs of a problem. The door had been functioning normally for months. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I researched maternal intuition, protective instincts, similar cases. I found stories of other mothers who had similar experiences, but never with this precision, this intense physical urgency. Noah asked me several times why we left the party. I never knew how to explain it. How do you explain to a child that your body sensed a danger your mind couldn't process? Now, 2 years later, I trust my instincts in a way I never did before. When something inside me says no, I listen. Even if it seems crazy, even if it doesn't make logical sense. Because sometimes our intuition knows things our reason hasn't yet discovered. Have you ever felt something like this? Has your body ever warned you about a danger you couldn't see but was real and present? Because I learned that there are things beyond our rational understanding, and ignoring those signals can be dangerous. Very dangerous. Emily's story made me reflect on something unsettling. To what extent can our instincts detect threats our consciousness hasn't yet processed? Science talks about subliminal perception, how our brain picks up signals that don't reach the conscious level. But what about when that perception goes beyond what's physically possible to detect? The next story I want to share came to me through an anonymous phone call. The woman identified herself only as Teacher Rachel and asked that I never try to uncover her true identity. The reason will become clear when you hear her story, because sometimes saving a life can bring consequences we'd rather keep secret. Story 2. Rachel, the teacher of nightmares. I'd rather not share my real name, so you can call me Rachel. I've been working as a kindergarten teacher at a public daycare in Seattle for 10 years. I love what I do. I love the kids. And I've always prided myself on creating a safe and welcoming environment for them. Until June of last year, I was a completely rational person. I didn't believe in premonitions, prophetic dreams, or anything like that. To me, a dream was just the brain processing, the day. But what happened to me made me question everything I thought I knew about intuition and maternal protection. It all started with a dream. Not a regular dream, but a nightmare so vivid, so real, that I woke up sweating and with my heart racing. In the dream, I was in the daycare's playground during recess. The kids were scattered around, playing on the equipment as usual. But there was something wrong in the air, a tension I could physically feel, even though it was a dream. Suddenly, I heard a strange noise, like a groan of metal. I looked at the big slide, the green and red one in the center of the playground, and saw cracks appearing in the support structure. In the dream, I tried to shout for the kids to get away, but no sound came out of my mouth. It was like I was paralyzed. And then, in slow motion, I saw the entire slide collapse. The whole structure came crashing down, right where 3 kids were playing. Ethan, 5 years old, Olivia, 4, and little, Ava, who had just turned 3. I woke up screaming. It was 3 a.m. My partner woke up startled, asking what had happened. I told him about the dream, but at the time it seemed like just that, a nightmare. Maybe I was overly worried about the kids' safety. Maybe it was work stress. But on Monday, when I got to the daycare, I looked at the slide and felt a chill. It was exactly like in the dream. Exactly. During that week, the dream repeated 3 times. Always the same, always ending with the collapse, always with the same 3 kids in the spot. Each repetition felt more real, more intense. I woke up feeling like I could smell the rusty metal, taste the dust in my mouth. By Friday, I decided to act. I arrived at the daycare early and went to inspect the slide. From the outside, it looked normal. The paint was a bit chipped. There were some rust spots, normal things for a piece of equipment exposed to the weather for years. But when I looked closely at the base, where the structure is fixed to the ground, I saw some small cracks in the concrete. They were imperceptible to anyone not looking for them. Thin fissures that could just be from time or natural ground movement. But they were exactly where, in my dream, everything started to collapse. All that week, I'd been watching the kids' behavior on the playground. Ethan, Olivia, and Ava really did play a lot on that slide. It was their favorite. Olivia especially spent most of recess climbing up and sliding down over and over. In the second week, the dreams got more intense. They weren't just at night anymore. During the day, I'd have flashes, sudden images of the collapse. I saw the terror on the kids' faces, heard the sound of the metal breaking. It was like my mind was trying to warn me about something. I tried talking to the director about a general playground inspection, but she said we'd just passed the annual review and everything was fine. I mentioned my concerns in a general way without bringing up the dreams. If I talked about prophetic nightmares, they'd think I was crazy. But the dreams didn't stop. Every night, the same scene. And during the day, I couldn't take my eyes off the slide. I watched every movement the kids made, every sound the structure made when someone played on it. That's when I made a decision that changed everything. In the third week, I went to the daycare on a Sunday. I had the keys because I sometimes organized weekend events. I went straight to the playground with a wrench and a small hammer I borrowed from my neighbor. It sounds crazy, I know, but I couldn't keep living with the anguish of seeing those 3 kids playing on the slide every day, knowing, or thinking I knew, what was going to happen. I dismantled the main connections of the structure. I didn't destroy it completely, but I left the slide clearly unstable, dangerous. When I was done, I put tape around it and wrote, "Closed, awaiting, maintenance," on a piece of paper. On Monday, when the director asked what had happened, I said I'd noticed the structure wobbling dangerously on Friday afternoon and, as a precaution, had cordoned off the slide. She wasn't happy with my unilateral action, but agreed to call a technician to assess it. The technician arrived on Tuesday. He examined the slide, and his face changed. "This was about to collapse," he said. "If a kid had been playing here when this happened," he didn't finish the sentence, but I knew exactly what I'd seen in my nightmares. "How much longer would the structure have held?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's hard to say precisely, but based on the signs of material fatigue, I'd say a few days, maybe a week at most. And considering the weight and force the kids exert while playing," he paused, looked at the spot where the kids always played. "It would have been a very serious accident." That night, for the first time in a month, I slept without nightmares. And the following days, I watched the behavior of the 3 kids who always appeared in my dream. Ethan was upset for a few days, but soon adapted to the other toys. Olivia cried on the first day, but by the next week, she'd forgotten about it. Ava, being younger, didn't seem to notice much of a difference. Kids are like that, resilient, they adapt quickly. But I couldn't stop thinking, what if I hadn't acted? What if I'd ignored the dreams, thinking it was just anxiety, just excessive worry? 3 weeks later, a new slide was installed. More modern, with a reinforced structure, much safer. The kids were thrilled with the new toy. For them, it was like getting a gift. But for me, it was confirmation of something I can't rationally explain to this day. How is it possible to dream of a specific accident with precise details, weeks before the conditions for that accident come together? How did my mind know where to look for the cracks? Which kids were in danger? The exact moment of the collapse? I don't have answers. I only know that, since then, I pay attention to my dreams differently, especially the recurring nightmares, the ones that leave a sense of urgency that doesn't go away. Because I learned that sometimes our subconscious perceives patterns our conscious mind hasn't yet processed, and ignoring those signals can have irreversible consequences. Have you ever had a dream that seemed to warn you about something real? A nightmare that wouldn't leave your head, that felt like more than just a product of your imagination? Because I learned that when it comes to protecting those we love, it's worth listening to even the most inexplicable signals our mind sends us, even if it means acting like a crazy person dismantling playground equipment in the middle of the night. Conclusion: two women, two completely different situations, one shared outcome, children protected by an instinct that goes beyond rational explanation. Emily felt an imminent danger in her own body, an hour before it manifested. There were no visible signs, no logical reasons for concern, but her maternal instinct detected a threat her conscious mind couldn't process. Rachel had prophetic nightmares about a specific accident, weeks before the conditions for that accident were ready to unfold. Her dreams not only predicted the danger, but pointed exactly where to look for the signs of structural failure. In both cases, they acted against logic. Emily took her son out of a party for no apparent reason. Rachel sabotaged a playground slide based on recurring nightmares. Both could have been seen as overprotective mothers, perhaps even unbalanced, but both saved lives. This makes me think about the nature of maternal intuition. Is there really an inexplicable connection between a mother, or a maternal figure like Rachel, and the children she protects? A kind of emotional radar that can detect threats that haven't yet physically manifested? Science offers some explanations. They talk about subliminal perception, how our brain processes thousands of pieces of information that don't reach consciousness. Microsignals in the environment, behavioral patterns, subtle changes that our subconscious picks up and turns into intuition. But Emily and Rachel's stories go beyond that. How do you explain the temporal precision of Emily's panic attack? How do you understand the specificity of Rachel's dreams? Maybe the answer isn't in science, but in something more primal, more ancestral. An evolutionary inheritance we developed over millions of years when survival depended on the ability to detect invisible dangers. Or maybe it's something even deeper. An emotional connection so intense it transcends the physical limits of perception. Maternal love is a force that can manipulate time and space, anticipating threats to protect those we love most. But there's something even more unsettling about these stories. Something that's been bothering me since I started collecting these accounts. I investigated both cases. I looked for records, local news, police reports, and what I found kept me awake for several nights. The accident at Noah's party happened exactly as Emily described. A defective garage door, 2 injured children, an hour and 15 minutes after she left the party. Everything confirmed. The issue with the daycare slide was also real. A compromised structure, an imminent risk of collapse, 3 kids who frequently played there, exactly as in Rachel's dreams. But here's what disturbed me. I found other cases, similar accidents, in other places, on other dates. Garage doors that collapsed, playground equipment that gave way, always involving children, always in situations where a maternal figure could have intervened but didn't. Emily and Rachel weren't the only ones to receive these warnings, but they were the only ones who listened. How many other mothers had inexplicable panic attacks and ignored them? How many teachers had recurring nightmares and dismissed them as work stress? How many tragedies could have been avoided if more women trusted their inexplicable instincts? That's the question that haunts me every night. Aren't we all receiving these warnings? But have we learned to ignore them in the name of rationality,